Before I get started, I just wanted to, this is kind of rare, but my sister Julie's here and her husband Jorge, and we don't get to see them very much on Sundays. So I wanted to introduce you to them. Y'all wave back there at them. Y'all wave at everybody. You've probably heard me use them in a sermon illustration here and there, and you can thank them for that, but don't believe anything she says as we leave this place, all right? We started last week this series called Everyday Disciple, and we've been looking at what does it look like to live for Jesus, to model Jesus every single day. And we kind of springboarded off of this verse in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, and it says this: whoever wants to be my disciple, this is Jesus talking, must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. It's an everyday thing. And so we started last week with, okay, I'm created in the image of God. I have a body, therefore Jesus had a body. What does it look like for me, my body to look like Jesus' body? And I'm talking about, the abs and the six-pack and all that stuff. I'm talking about the parts of the body that Jesus had, that he honored God with, his entire ministry. And we began with our body, and we said, our body was created by God, for God, to honor God. And that it's not our own body, it belongs to God because he purchased it, and it is a temple, and a temple is where deity dwells. And so we have to be careful what we do with our body, what we put in our body, because it is a place where the Spirit of God dwells when we are Christ followers. And even if you're not a Christ follower, your body belongs to him because he's your creator. So we started to talk about what does that look like. And each week of this series, we're going to go to different parts of the body. Today, we're going to talk about our eyes. We're just going to start here and just move down, all right? What does it look like to honor God with our eyes? Now, most of you know that I've been married happily for 42 years. Celebrated that this last month. But I wanted to share with you the secret to that. And the secret to that is that I have a girlfriend. I thought I would show you a picture of my girlfriend. She looks like this. Now, if you ask Diana, she would call her a mistress, but anyway, when I started riding motorcycles years ago, and I didn't ride when I was a kid, so I was, an older adult when I started riding motorcycles, and I rode them basically because there were some guys in the church that rode them and said, you need to join us, so they took me to a Harley-Davidson store, and my life changed after that. And so we've been riding for quite a while now, but when I first started riding, having no experience at all, I took the motorcycle safety course that they say you should probably do, and so that's what I did. And one of the concepts that they teach you in that class is that make sure you understand that wherever your eyes are looking, that's where your bike is going to go. Now, that may sound simple, but I actually had a lot of trouble with 90-degree turns. When I'd come to a stop sign and have to turn left or right, I really struggled with that. And so when I was first riding, I'd basically have to walk through the intersection, in the turn. And finally, the guy who was teaching us said, Bobby, look, you've got to take your eyes off of what's in front of you, the road, and look where you want to go. And so what I learned was I make a 90-degree turn, rather than look and try to steer it with my eyes, I look up and look at some point in distance, like a speed limit sign or a light pole or something. If I look at that, it's amazing. The bike will go wherever you look. It's just an interesting concept. But most of us learned that concept in sports. When we were younger, the ball's going to go where your eyes are looking, right? Whether it's basketball, football, baseball, bowling, that ball is going to go wherever your eyes are looking. If you want to hit the basket, you got to look at the basket to shoot at the basket. With the baseball, you got to look at the glove and throw it at the glove. Football, look at the receiver, throw it to the receiver. Bowling, I don't know what you look at in bowling, but anyway, it's same concept. And you also learned it when you learned to drive. You learned that you can't look down on the road while you're driving. You got to keep your eyes up ahead, right? And whenever there are bad throws or mistakes made or swerves on the road, it's usually because we're not looking at the target or something momentarily distracted us from the target. And so it's just a concept, a physical concept. Your eyes, wherever your eyes are looking, that's where the rest of you will follow. Now, it's not only a physical principle, it's a spiritual principle as well. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at a few verses in Luke chapter 11 if you want to turn there. But let me just kind of talk about the main thing today. This is what I want you to hang your hat on today. This is this main truth, and that's this. To be an everyday disciple, to give our lives to Christ every single day, our whole body to Christ, we have to realize that what we see determines what we pursue. What we see determines what we pursue. We're going to read these verses in Luke chapter 11 in just a moment, but I have to say that I've read these verses for years, and for a long time they didn't really connect with me. I mean, I believe they were true, but I had some questions. In this passage, Jesus basically says that our eyes influence the direction of our life. That what we see determines what we pursue. What we gaze at eventually impacts where we go with our whole life. Now think back with me for a moment in your past, maybe years. Aren't there people that you wish you'd never laid eyes on? You saw him or you saw her, and you went that direction, and you ended up going in a place where you didn't want to go. Isn't that true? And if you had been there 5 minutes earlier, or even 5 minutes later, your whole life could have been different. Now, aren't there people that you're glad you laid eyes on? I still remember, and I've told you the story of how Diane and I met. We were at a church social, and we didn't want to be there, neither one of us. Our parents kind of made us go, and we're playing volleyball, and we're rotating around, and all of a sudden, there she was in front of me, right across the net. And my blue eyes looked into her green eyes, and I saw aqua. I mean, because I laid my eyes on her, it took my life in a totally different direction because I didn't want to be there. She didn't want to be there. What if I hadn't showed up? What if she hadn't shown up? What if I'd never gotten to the game? So there are people that we are glad that we have laid eyes on. There are things in your life. If you had not seen them, your life would be different. There are things in your life that because you saw them, your life was changed. What we see determines what we pursue. Now that principle is inherent in our everyday lives as well. How many of you go to Walmart or Target and you're going to buy one thing? One thing. And you come out with 20. What is that? That's your eyes. Because you went in there to get that thing you wanted to get, but then you looked around and said, ooh, I don't have one of those. And you come out with more. And it's not a feeling you got. It's not something you heard. It is something you saw with your eyes. These two things get us in a lot of trouble, don't they? I mean, these two things can cause us to do things like that and have financial problems, which can lead to marital problems and arguments. And it's not just a spending thing, it's a visual thing. You've exposed yourself to so much stuff that you think, I got to have it. You were perfectly content with your car until you saw someone else's car. You were perfectly intent with that outfit you had on until you saw someone else's outfit. You were perfectly content with the house you bought until you saw someone else's house, and then you went home and said, who would live in this dump? I mean, gosh. You were perfectly satisfied with your spouse till you saw somebody else's spouse. What we see determines what we pursue. What comes through these eyes can cause a lot of problems. So we're in Luke chapter 11. We're going to read a few verses, and then I'm going to come back and talk about them, okay? So Luke chapter 11, beginning in verse 33. No one lights a lamp, and this is Jesus talking again. No one lights a lamp and puts it in a place where it will be hidden or under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand so that those who come in may see the light. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body is also full of light. But when they are unhealthy, your body also is full of darkness. See to it then that the light within you is not darkness. Therefore, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it dark, it will be just as full of light as when a lamp shines its light on you. Let's stop and pray and ask God to open our hearts to this. Father, these eyes that we have can get us in so much trouble. But we do know, Father, that you want us to honor you with them. That you want us to have the eyes that you had, to see things as you see them. And so I pray that you would open our hearts to what you have to say to us and show us how to have eyes like you. We ask this in your name. Amen. Now let's go back and just kind of tear these verses apart a little bit, talk about them. Go back to verse 33 again, where Jesus says, no one lights a lamp and puts it in a place where it will be hidden or under a bowl. Now that may sound strange. Instead, they put it on its stand so that those who come in may see the light. Now, it's hard for us to understand the significance of this verse because we live in a well-lit world, don't we? Back in the first century, though, it was very dark. No electricity, no street lights, nothing to light up the place. So when the sun went down, it was dark. When you went inside your home, it was really, really dark. My grandfather used to tell me a story of when he was a young boy. Sometimes he would have to walk home from work in the dark. And he lived out in the country. And so when you'd walk home, if there was a moon, a full moon, or really any kind of moon, you could see. But if there was not a moon, or if it was cloudy, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So a lot of times he would have to walk in the dark, and so when he would walk home, if there was cloudy or there was no moon, he would follow the ruts in the road with his feet. And he told me one night he was walking along, and it was cloudy or no moon or whatever, but it was dark. He could not see anything, and he was walking along the rut on his way home, and all of a sudden he heard someone walking from the opposite direction in the other rut. And his heart began to race, and he sped up his pace a little bit. The other person did the same thing. And so all of a sudden, they pass each other. Not a word was spoken. They just kept on going. Can you imagine country dark like that? Not knowing who in the world you just passed. Not knowing what was going to happen. They just passed in the night. Well, in the first century, that's kind of how dark it was. And every home had a lamp. And that lamp looked very much like this, okay? Some of you may have hurricane lamps, you know, that run on the oil, that you use oil to fuel them. Well, they had these little lamps, and you can't really tell how big that is, but most of them fit in the palm of their hands. They weren't that big. And they would fill them with oil. And most homes in the first century only had one lamp. And the reason they only had one lamp is because oil was so expensive. Okay? Nothing really changed, has it, in 2,000 years? But they would have one, and they would put enough oil in it to hopefully get them through the evening until they could go to bed and wake up the next morning, and it was light. And so they would light their oil lamp as the sun began to set, and then they would set that lamp up on a stand so that it would light the whole area. Because the higher the light, the more that it exposes what is in the darkness. Now see, at night when you light your lamp, you didn't put it under a bowl. You didn't hide it in a corner. You set it up high, Jesus said, so that you can see the light. Now, just to give you an example of this, some of you maybe in your homes, have you noticed where your lights are? Up, right? And then some of you have those things that they call uplights, but they don't give as much light, do they, as light that's from above. Just to give you an example, Jason, can you go back to that cue I was telling you about? Okay, good. Now, do you see back here we have uplights? And if this light wasn't on, you wouldn't be able to see anything on this stage because the uplight's behind me. But because there's a light above me, you can see me. Okay? You can go back to that now, Jason. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Jesus said you put it up high, you put it above so that it lights everything that's in the room. It exposes or it reveals what is in the room. The light expels the darkness, and it reveals to you what environment you're in. And then he begins to apply this to our lives specifically. Look at verse 34. He says, your eye is the lamp of your body. That is, your eyes reveal to your body what is in the environment. The eyes send a message to your brain, and your brain informs your body. So your eyes are like a lamp that exposes the rest of your body to the environment you are in. In other words, what you expose your eyes to, you expose your entire body to. And then he goes on. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body also is full of life. Now that word healthy is a medical term in the Greek, Georgia. And it means that when your whole body is tuned into light, if your eyes are healthy and clear, your whole body is tuned into light, or your body will be accurately informed about what's in the environment. But then Jesus begins to make a transition from the physical eyes, and he says this. But when they are unhealthy, and instead of using the medical term that would be the opposite of healthy in the Greek, he uses a very general Greek word for the word unhealthy. And it's the word porneo. Does that sound familiar to you? It's the word that we get the word, English word, pornography. And it's a very, very general word. But Jesus is saying if you have bad eyes, or if what comes through your eyes is bad, if you expose these two lenses to corrupt or evil things in the world, look what happens. He says, but when they are unhealthy, your body also is full of darkness. Just like your physical eyes light up the rest of your body and reveal what's in the environment, if the wrong things pass through these two lenses, it ultimately impacts the whole body. What you see determines what you pursue. And then he goes on to give us the application in verse 35. He said all that to say this. See to it then that the light within you is not darkness. Now what does that mean? See to it that the light within you is not darkness. How can the light be darkness? See to it, be careful, that's what that means, that what comes through these eyes, the lamp, is not darkness, is not evil, is not impure, is not unhealthy. That's his application. And then he goes on to give one more final thought in verse 36. He says, therefore, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it dark, it will be just as full of light as when a lamp shines its light on you. And Jesus says, if you live your life in such a way that you expose your eyes and consequently your whole body to only that which is light, then your whole life will be full of light and there will be no darkness. And this is just a fancy way of Jesus saying, be careful what you look at. Because what you look at will impact the direction of your life. What you see determines what you pursue. If you fill these eyes with the wrong things, it impacts your body and it impacts the direction of your life. Now, everybody in this room knows that. Because we all have a story, don't we, about the past? I wish I'd never seen it. I wish I'd never seen her. I wish I'd never seen him. I wish I'd never seen that. All of us have seen things that impacted the way that we spent our money, the way we spent our time, the way we see things that we wish we'd never seen. And at the same time, we've seen things that we're so glad we saw because we can't imagine what life would be like if we hadn't seen them. So Jesus is saying, be careful what you look at. Did you grow up with that song in Sunday school or vacation Bible school, be careful, little eyes, what you see? See, that's not just for children. That's not just for teenagers. That's for all of us. For the rest of your life, what you see will impact the direction of your life. If your eyes are tuned into light, tuned into that which is healthy, it gives light and life to the rest of the body. That's what Jesus is saying. Now we know that's true. Your eyes determine what your body is exposed to. It impacts our relationships. It impacts our money. It impacts what we think about. It impacts everything. And yet the tendency is for us to think like this. If it's legal, then I should look at it. If everybody else is looking at it, it's okay to look at it. I mean, I'm an adult. I can handle it. My convictions and beliefs and faith and friends, I mean, they're the things that impact the direction of my life. I can look at what I want and avoid any consequences. And Jesus says, you are so wrong. Unlike any part of your body, your eyes are the lamp. Your eyes are what expose your body to the environment. And if you expose your body to the wrong environment, the wrong things are bound to happen. So that leaves us with this question. What are we supposed to look at? What are we supposed to not look at? Well, I'll answer that in a minute. But before I do, I want to draw your attention to 3 lessons, 3 implications that just jump out of this passage about our eyes. And they're so important. If you're taking notes, I hope you write these down because these 3 things have the potential to keep you out of trouble and to get you out of trouble, out of unbelievable trouble. They have the potential to bring healing to your marriage. They have the potential to bring healing to your thought life. They have the potential to bring healing to your finances. These 3 things will enable us to honor God with our eyes every single day like Jesus did. And here's the first one. What comes through our eyes impacts our perspective of life. Our take on life isn't just from our background. It's not just through the thoughts that we have. Our eyes impact our perspective on all of life. Have you ever seen a friend or a loved one get into trouble and you saw them making terrible decisions and moving in a direction, down a road, relationally or financially? I mean, usually it's one of those 2 things. but it's clear to you that they're making a mistake. But when you try to talk to them about it, they don't see it like you do. You sit them down, you say, look, here's what I see. But they say, that's not what I see. Look, it's unhealthy. No, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened in my life. And you wonder why it's so clear to you that they can't see it. And if you have kids, you see this all the time. As an adult, you have been exposed to more things that have impacted your perspective on life. They have limited experience and limited perspective. And what Jesus is saying is, if you're not careful, what you expose yourself to will so thwart, so change, so impact, distort, skew your perspective on life, and you'll never know it. Everybody else will see it, but you can't because of what you've exposed yourself to. What comes through these two eyes impacts the perspective of my life and my perspective of what impacts how I make decisions. The second implication is this: what comes through my eyes impacts my sensitivity to truth. Now hang with me, because this is sensitive. If you expose your physical eyes to the wrong kind of light, it will desensitize your eyes to light. Over time, our eyes become less and less sensitive to certain kinds of light and more sensitive to other kinds of light. That's why you don't want to sit too close to a computer monitor. That's why if you're a welder or watching a welder, you want to make sure you have that face shield on that has the eye shield on it. What you expose your eyes to will impact your sensitivity to truth. Now, do you know how I know that? There are things in your life right now, possibly, that you're involved in. Relationships you're in, ways you're doing things, that at some point in the past, months, years, you said, I would never do that. And now you're doing it. I would never get into a relationship like that, but now you're in one. You're doing things with your money you said you would never do. You're doing things at work you said you would never do. Things you tell your kids not to do, but you do them. Somewhere along the way, you overexposed your eyes to something that has desensitized you to truth. You saw everybody else doing it. If everybody else is doing it, this must be how it is. Maybe you're here today, maybe you're watching online. And maybe you're living with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. And years ago, you said you would never do that. Now you are. Do you know why? You exposed your eyes to something different. And you quit looking at something else, and now you're not sensitive to the truth. Now, I'm not getting on your case. Not like God's going to get you or something. I just know where that leads. And I know where that leads because I've never done it. And I'll explain that in a minute. Hang with me. I look at you living with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and I think, man, they are really missing out. You're thinking, no, it's great. But I see it differently. And be honest, there was a time you thought it was wrong. What happened? Well, let me tell you what didn't happen. You didn't do a study. You didn't get your Bible out and see what it had to say about it. You didn't survey people that had lived together and find out their opinions on it. You didn't survey married people. What happened? You got exposed to something. You saw other people doing it. You saw them doing it in the movies. It desensitized you to truth. And you've made a life decision. Now, maybe you're here, you're doing some unethical things at work that you said you would never do. You act completely different at work than you do at church or at home because of what you see around you. You exposed those two eyes to the wrong thing, and it desensitized you to the truth. And it will deprogram your conscience. Jesus said said, see to it that the light you see is not darkness, because it impacts the rest of your life and your decisions. Now, one final implication, and this is so important. The best way to understand darkness is to walk in light. See, there's a way of thinking in our culture that says the only way to understand something is to experience it. The only way to appreciate it is to try it. And that is so wrong. Jesus said, if your whole body is full of light and no darkness is in it, it will be completely full of light. If you will expose your eyes to the right thing, and no part of your body is in darkness, he says you will have full insight into all of life. The best way to understand sin is not to sin. To move into darkness in order to explore and understand darkness is foolish. If there's a dark room and you want to know what's in that room, what do? You turn on the light. If you go in there in the dark, it's not going to help you. You're not going to see. If you want to know what's in the dark, you turn on the light. And Jesus says if you want to understand the intricacies of sin, the intricacies of a different kind of lifestyle, the intricacies of a habit, experience is not the best teacher. Experience simply moves you into darkness. And when you're in darkness, it's dark. That's why you can't see. That's why you know people, and maybe it's you, but you know someone who's stumbling around in a lifestyle or stumbling around in a habit or an unhealthy relationship, and on the outside, you can see it, but they can't see it. Why? Because they went into darkness to experience darkness, and now they're just stumbling around in the dark. That's why when I counsel people, I can give them insight, not because I'm smart, but because I stayed in the light. When you walk in light, you understand darkness. When you walk in darkness, you won't understand darkness. You'll just be hurt by the darkness. If you will be careful about what goes into these two lenses, you'll understand far more than you will experience. And if you're careful about what goes in here, you will avoid experiences that you'll be glad you avoided. So, if we're to be an everyday disciple, we have to realize that what we see determines what we pursue. And Jesus invites us into a lifestyle that's somewhat countercultural, where if you will guard these, fill your life with light, you will understand the darkness around you. Now, what are we supposed to look at? What are we supposed to not look at? Well, just look at the things that honor God. Quit looking at the things that don't honor God. That sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's very difficult. Very difficult. But what if you tried it for a day? What if tomorrow, when you woke up, you made a decision, I am not going to Amazon today. I am not going to turn my computer on today. I'm not going to that website. I am not going to walk by her cubicle today. What if you just tried it one day? And then let God do the rest. Let me make you a promise. You will not miss out on anything good, but it will help you avoid the darkness. So I'll leave you with this question. What would it look like for you to do what Jesus says and have eyes like him that honor God? What does it look like?